Good afternoon, guys. This is teacher María Milagros, and right now I'm recording the class that we just saw. Today is Friday, March the 5th, 2021, and this is our weekly economics class, 7th grade, okay? As you can see here in the cover, the topic that we will be dealing with today is traditional and command economies. What are they? How do they relate to everything we have been seeing so far in class? I will explain in just a moment. Let's go to the next slide. Please remember, if after you finish watching this class, you have any question, doubt, concern, email me, okay? I'm always available for you for any questions or doubts that you may have. Now, let's do like a wrap up of everything we have seen so far, because everything has like a connecting line. We are all moving towards a goal, and we have taken many steps towards that goal. So far, we have learned that, remember, from the very first class in the first term. Point number one, dealing with scarcity is part of the human condition. We also saw that a few weeks ago. Remember, anytime your wants or needs, remember that they're unlimited. Those unlimited wants and needs exceed, they go beyond your limited resources, we have scarcity. What are those limited resources? We have seen them too. We have money, time, space, people. We're not going to live forever. Sadly, we are not billionaires yet. We are only one person. We cannot duplicate ourselves or be in two places at the same time. So we need to choose what to do with our time, etc. So we have scarcity always, all the time in our lives. This scarcity, point number three, leads us to having to choose what to do with limited resources. Remember, that's what we did the paced guide to decide what is the best alternative in any problem or decision. And last but not least, what we saw in our class 2, Introduction to Economic Systems, every society from the beginning of time has to develop ways of handling scarcity. Every society, the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, people in Nazi Germany, us here in Venezuela 2021, every society has to develop ways of handling scarcity. They must find ways to allocate, remember, distribute is a synonym for this word, limited resources to produce and distribute products. And that leads us to the definition of an economic system, which is, we already saw this slide too in our last class, theory class, the methods through which a society organizes itself. So how a society organizes itself to allocate limited resources in the production and distribution of products is called an economic system. If you were able to join our face-to-face session this week when we met at school, I explained that we're going to be studying 4 types of economic systems. We're going to study 2 today, or well, we did, and now I'm recording that. And the next or last 2 we will see next week. This is all in preparation for our project. Remember, the island project. Now, let's go to the next slide. We also saw this, the 3 economic questions that every society must address or answer in this specific order, right? So the first one is, what will be produced? We have to determine, do we plant rice? Do we produce cell phones? Do we live of tourism? That depends on the society. Question number 2, how will it be produced? Do we want workers, laborers? Do we want machines? Do we want different factories for the same product in different stages? Or do we just want one? That is the second question. And the third one is who gets the products that are produced. We also had this in the test, remember? We import oil, gasoline from Iran. Okay, how do we distribute that gasoline? Does it all go to gas stations in which people can pay with dollars? Or does it go towards the stations that in which the state covers a part of the price of the gasoline or oil? So this is addressing the third question, and these all work together to form the three basic questions that every society with its economic system must answer. So, as we've seen, throughout history, many societies and nations have come and gone. Does the Roman Empire still exist? No. Do the Neanderthals that walked the earth during the Ice Age and lived in caves and didn't have written language still live nowadays? No. Yet, every society has had to develop an economic system, and they all fit into the four types of basic economic systems. The first three types are called traditional, command, and market. You can call it either, for example, traditional economic system or traditional economy. Then we have a fourth, which is the last economic system, which is a blend. That means a mix of the other three, and that is what we call a mixed economy. As I said before, what I will do is explain the first two, traditional and command, in this class, and then next week on March the 12th, we will see the last two. So, we did this task. Of course, you're not going to do it right now. We did it online. I asked your friends to open their browsers and look up traditional economy, like to do a pre-research of what we were going to see. So they had to select any web page that they liked. They had to read it very quickly. And they would take note of 1, 2, or 3 keywords related to this topic. And then they had to go to this page and insert the code so we could create this word cloud together. And this is what we came up. If we had to describe a traditional economy, how will we do that? And this is the results we got. We had history, customs, time-honored beliefs, traditions, production, bartering, demand, innovation, inheritance. These are all words that are related to a traditional economy. How are they related? You will see that over here. This is in a graphic manner the traditional economy traits, the characteristics that defined it. Let me turn on my laser so I can show you while I explain. Okay, let's start with this one on the left. The first and main characteristic is that in a traditional economic system, economic decisions are based on customs, beliefs, and that also includes religious beliefs. Okay, so it's based on tradition, on the criteria that we have as a society and what we have done previously. This is closely related to this characteristic here above. Economic activities are typically centered on the family or clan. I don't know if you have ever watched a movie or played a video game where usually in Europe in the around the 1200s, 1300s, maybe 14th, 15th century, where they were like independent cities and each work was passed down from father to son. For example, if I was the son of a baker, you know, a bakery, my father bakes bread, then when I grow old, I am going to bake bread. And that is my whole job. If I come from a family that harvests or plants corn, that is what I will do for the rest of my life, because economic activities are centered on the family. I'm going to marry my family's business, and there is no other option. Keep that in mind. Third trait, people will make what they have always made generation after generation because it's tradition. As we just saw, this is all linked, okay? How does this relate? Remember when we saw the word cloud, we saw like time-honored beliefs. And that is because tradition for this economy is really important. Think of Asia. They have a really deep disrespect for what the elders do, for what their past generations have done. And this is what a traditional economy implies, tradition. This being said, you should also know that men and women are given different economic roles and tasks. That means that usually women are in charge of one, the house or the children, or two, specific things such as in Asia, for example, planting rice. I'm sorry that I give so many examples of Asia, but it's a pretty common example. Men, on the other hand, are usually handed the hardest, between quotation marks, activities like hunting, regathering, or something that involves labor with their hands, or lifting, carrying, etc. Or the actual work. For example, in the case of the bakery, the men do the bread, they bake the bread, and the women stay at home and take care of the children and the house and the education. And they will never exchange them, okay? There is no exchanging of these roles, usually, or like 98% of the time. If you're a girl, that is your destiny. If you're a boy, that is your destiny. There's almost no exchanging of these roles and tasks. How do we find them, or do this economic systems still apply today? Well, in the past, they could be found everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Ever since man has roamed the earth, there has been a traditional economy. From the Neanderthals to the indigenous people to Europe in the 1500s, 1600s, even traditional economies. This is why I included here feudal villages of medieval Europe, which is the example I provided about. There weren't any actual countries in Europe, but like small cities that had a lord. You will see that in next year when you study history. And the cities were independent from each other, and each of them had its own economy, and they didn't rely on anyone else. So that is an example of a traditional economy, because every family had their own business and that was it. Today, on the other hand, there are very few examples of traditional economic systems. Why? Because societies have found different ways to deal with how they answer the three economic questions outside of this panorama. So, where can you find traditional economic systems right now? Well, in three main areas. The first one, it's the Aborigines in Australia, in here, the red dot. This is not like a stoplight, okay? Like a semáforo in Spanish. It doesn't mean that it's very low in Australia, medium in Canada, and very common in the Amazon, okay? It's just for you to know geographically where you can find it. So the red dot means Australia. Aborigines are like indigenous tribes in Australia. Then we have the Inuit in Canada, here, Alaska over here, and Greenland. They are also indigenous tribes who, as you can see, live very, very up north, and they are very small communities where tradition is kept very closely, because that's the way they have lived for hundreds, even thousands of years. And in green, you can find the indigenous tribes of the Amazon rainforest. We have it right next door. In fact, many of our own indigenous people live like this. They have a traditional economy. And remember that even though we're not officially part of the Amazon, we have the same ecosystem and tribes that are lower in here. So in a nutshell, or in brief, between 5 and 6% of the world's population uses still this kind of economic system. This was traditional economy, sorry, no plural. Now, what we did for the second system was again another quick search online, and we went again to Menti, but to another code. Why? Because it's a different format. We did like this question and answer thing. What I requested was to describe a command economy in 5 words maximum. And something that came up really frequently was the word government, as you can see here. We also got what? Publicly central authority, the government decides what goods will be produced. Communist society, that is a great characteristic, we will be talking about that. It doesn't rely on supply and demand laws. Government controls the market. What else we got? Communist society, again. Government determines what goods should be produced. As you can see here, government and communist are 2 keywords of this system, and we will see why right now. In here, I have also displayed the traits or characteristics of a command economy more graphically than usual. Let's start here in the lower step. In a command or planned economy, all economic decisions are made by a central authority, usually the government. That is why it came up so much during the research. That means that all the decisions that are related to resources, to the wants and needs of the population, to what is produced, what is sold, how much people make, that is all controlled by the government. In here, it's, well, they say central authority because sometimes the government creates another institution that is in charge of deciding on such matters, but we're going to call it the government. Second characteristic, a command economy is a key feature of any communist society. What does this mean? That in every communist society, you're going to have a command economy. Why? Because in a communist society, the state controls everything. They control what people read, what they don't read, what they eat, what they don't. And of course, they're going to control the products, the prices, what people do for a living. Everything is going to be controlled by the state. Characteristic number 3, a command economy can include both state and privately owned companies. However, the privately owned companies are always state directed. What does this mean? That, for example, imagine that your parents, well, some of them do, own companies, okay? So if we had a command economy here in Venezuela, then we would have companies that are owned by the government, by the state, and we would have companies that can be owned by normal people, like you and I and your parents. However, the companies that are not owned by the state, that means the ones that we as normal people own, are always going to be directed by the state. That means that there is going to be someone from the government within our company telling us what to do and what not to do. The company might be mine, but I have no decision-making power there. This is what this means. In the case of a school, for example, the school can be owned by a private group of people, but the state will direct it. They will tell you what to teach, what not to teach, how much to charge for it, etc. Then, characteristic number 4, up here, is that the government sets the prices of all products. Does it sound familiar? And dictates which jobs people must work. That means, for example, if I have a person called Lara, and Lara lives in, let's put a country that it's very random, Cambodia. If Lara lives in Cambodia and Cambodia has a command economy, then the government in Cambodia will tell Lara, you know, we have to plant rice in this state. You will go to this state to plant rice. Or you will go to the university and study education because we need more teachers, for example. So the government dictates which jobs people must work, and also the prices of the products. If we're talking about potatoes, then okay, potatoes are going to be $1 per kilogram, and that is the price. Nothing more, nothing less. That is why there is no competition. Remember when we studied this, we said that competition was different companies trying to win what? The customer and their money. But in here, they cannot apply the strategy of lowering the prices so more people come and then I'm going to be better than you with advertisement. No, there's no competition because everything costs the same. So you cannot compete with anyone. And the last characteristic, which is, well, I included it for general knowledge. Maybe you have not seen this. But there was once a time where two of the biggest countries in the world, which are China and the Soviet Union, were communist and therefore had command economies. Then they suffered like very heavy reforms during the 1980s, and they completely, well, maybe not completely, but they severely transformed their economic systems. So after these reforms took place, many command economies disappeared. In fact, very, very few remain, and we will see where. This is in the map where you will find command economies in our current world. The first dot is North Korea. Remember, the Koreas are here in a peninsula. This is China, by the way. China is here. And then you have this piece of land that is occupied by South Korea on the south and North Korea above. North Korea, remember that they're communist. Therefore, they follow a command economy. Then we have Cuba, communist. Again, we have Cuba right here next to Florida or below Florida. Command economy. Belarus, which was part of the Soviet Union. This is Russia over here, all this big land, well, up until here, kind of. So in here we have Belarus, and they have a command economy too. Iran, here in Asia. This is India, for you to have an idea. So up north, you have Iran, and they have also a command economy. The state controls every economic decision that is made in the country. And we have Libya. Libya is a country in Africa. If you want like to locate yourself, Egypt is right here. So Libya is Egypt's neighbor, geographically speaking. So we have Libya right here. And they also have a command economy. As you can see, there is no dot for us. And that is, I think it was Cheto who asked in class if we had a command economy. And the answer is complex, but no. We have different traits of a command economy, but we are not totally a command economy. If we were, then we wouldn't have privately owned companies. We wouldn't have money coming in from the outside. We wouldn't have freedom, or well, in between quotation marks, to choose what to buy, where to buy it, what to do with our lives. We wouldn't have any of that. So even though we have a lot of traits of a command economy, and as you can see, it's very proper of a left hand, politically oriented to the left ideology, we're not fully a command economy. That is what we will see next week when we study market and mixed economies. And this was our class. Let me turn off my pointer. Remember, if you have any question at all, send me an email through academia. There is no homework this week. The only thing you need to do is summarize the content of the presentation and copy it in your notebook. I'm not going to tell you what to copy, what not to copy. It's up to you. Remember that you will have to apply the theory to your project, and that is why it is important that we check all the 4 systems before we get to our own island project. Well, guys, this has been everything. If you made it. Okay, I think this kicked me out. I don't know for how long I was speaking to the void, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. See you next Friday. Bye-bye. As always, love you.